folks. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Pirkei Avos, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Checkmate Coffman, who I always enjoy spending time with. He shares Torah like no one else. He's the Energizer Bunny of Torah, and I so appreciate everything he shares, and I'm thankful that he takes the time to share the ethics of the fathers with us. It's very, very important that people begin to grasp what ethics are and why they're ethical. Exactly what is the foundation? And I know Rabbi Coffman's been giving us wonderful explanations, and I know he's continuing still today with chapter 1, Mishnah 15. So let's just jump right in and see how the rabbi's doing. Rabbi, how are you in Israel today? You look great.
We're doing good. Weather's beating us down a little bit. A lot of hot weather. Very good. You know, we're certainly not going to get rain here. We got plenty of rain. Got plenty of rain in the winter. So we're going to continue moving along. So we are finishing up the 15th Mishnah. I do promise that, let's say without a vow here, but we'll see. We should be able to get through the 15th Mishnah, not too much left. The last part of the Mishnah, which just reviewed, said, Shammai said, you make your Torah fixed study, fixed practice, spoke about that, right? Say little, do much. We definitely spoke about that.
Oh, yeah.
And because a lot of people out there do little, and talk a big game, right? That is, that's the major problem, because they're all big experts in Wikipedia, right? So they're all gonna, quote the same thing and whatever, but they don't really do much. They just talk a lot. And so the last part of the mission we're gonna hit is receive everyone with a cheerful face, right? With a happy face. Now, what does this mean exactly? The person has a guest. The guest shows up to your house. You're not going to welcome them with a frown unless it's your in-laws or something like that, right? You're going to greet them. You should greet them, right? Certainly with a happy face, that you're happy. You're happy to see them. Because after all, if they bring you something, let's say someone brings you a gift. Imagine, someone comes over, they bring you, I don't know, whatever, candy, chocolate. They'll bring you flowers, who knows what, and you have a sour face. Well, they're not going to want to be there, and they're certainly not going to want to give you the candy or the chocolate itself. So therefore, all the gifts that somebody may give you, all may be moots, all may be for nothing, because you sit there with a sour face. Now, it could be a person had a bad day, person going through a difficult time or whatever, but a person has to remember, what does that have to do with anybody else, right? Just because you may be having a hard time doesn't necessarily give you the right, certainly, to do that. At the same time, we're only human. We get beaten down by life. No one, not everybody knows 100% what you're going through at all times. So it might be difficult, right? It certainly might be difficult, but you'll tell me, I don't understand. How hard is it, to put on a smile, right? And the reality is that if you can fake it and you're having a hard time, so good. If you can fake it, meaning you show who you are on a regular basis, right, then that's going to be a problem, right? That is going to be, a definite issue. And again, it's not the fault of the person who you're seeing, right? It's the fault with the person himself. Now, that being said, we get into bad habits. So if a person, let's say, grew up in a family where someone walked in the door, and by walking in the door, it's not like they were so, happy to be home and say, hi, how are you? What's new? This and that. They come in, they're tired, they're grumpy, whatever, and it's understandable. Person works all day, you're tired, whatever. The best thing to do is have a dog. Dog will jump all over you, love you no matter what you do. Right. So in the end, if a person sees that on a regular basis, what's going to happen? It'll have an effect, right? It'll definitely have an effect on a person. And that's not, that's psychological. That is not something that's rational, meaning that, a person can have, a great wife, great kids, whatever. And somehow it's just very hard. Doesn't matter. You had a long bus ride, you had a long trip, you had this. Yeah, everything could be going great, but somehow, you get to the door, you may not, put on the best smile that you have. So either person has to, take a few breaths before they walk in the door, or, take a few minutes before you actually go in. Stop, wait, before you do that, because obviously nobody else deserves that. But if you grew up never seeing it, right? Never seeing the warmth and the happiness or whatever, it's something psychological, right? It's something that you're going to have to work like a dog in order to overcome. Now you might think, come on, how hard is this? Right? How hard is it? Depends. If a person's in a great mood, they can walk in the door, still be in a great mood. Person's in a mediocre mood, all one person has to do is say one thing and just knock them off, right? Like a trigger. So you might again, someone's going to say that's, maybe this isn't normal, right? It's not. It's a psychological issue, right? Definitely be a psychological issue. But if a person has a karas hatov, they have gratitude, right? Certainly for the people in the house, why should a person come in without a smile, right? It's definitely something much deeper, much deeper there. So here Shammai says three things. Right, again, make your Torah study for fixed practice, say little do much, receive everyone with a cheerful face. So what Shammai says, there are three things corresponds to what Jeremiah the prophet says. What does Jeremiah say? Jeremiah mentions wisdom, that a person should try, it's going to have or may not have, whatever it is. Wisdom, wealth, and strength. Right, he mentions three things.
Wisdom, wealth, and strength.
Wisdom, wealth, and strength. Right. So what does wisdom represent? Wisdom, according to the Mishnah, represents fixed practice of learning Torah. All right, fixed practice for learning Torah. Corresponding to wealth, says little and does a lot. Right? Because that's only how a person can accumulate wealth. Right? Doesn't have to do that much. If God blesses it, he could invent those little, cocktail umbrellas that you put in a cocktail to make a mint. Or you could invent a pet rock. You don't have to do that much. And what happens? You make a mint. Corresponding to strength, interesting enough, he says, refers to over here accepting everyone with a happy face. Now, you're going to ask the $1 million question, you and everybody else, what does that have to do with it? Right? What's the connection by having strength and accepting everyone with a happy face? It means overcoming your evil inclination and fighting it against it with all your strength. Because the Mishnah later is going to tell us who is strong. We're going to see it, right, in the thing in the third chapter. Who is strong? Someone who overcomes his evil inclination. We're not talking about how much he can lift, right? We're not talking about how much he can eat or whatever. We're not talking power in that sense. Power over here, strength, means to overcome the evil inclination. Obviously, certainly not an easy thing. Talmud tells us clear that the only way a person can overcome his evil inclination is if God helps him. If God doesn't help him, no matter what you do, you will not be able to overcome it, right? These things are not necessarily so natural, meaning that a person get addicted to all kinds of things that are bad for you, right? Whether it's smoking, whether, video games, other things that are addictive, that don't do anything for you, could certainly bring you down. Now, why would a person want to work on that? A person likes playing video games, likes watching movies, likes sports, like any of these things, right? Likes playing Candy Crush, right? So he likes all these things, but what happens? What happens? He may admit that, it's an addictive habit, but why would he want to change it? Right? The only reason he'd want to change it if it's taken away from everything else and someone nails him, like his wife. He says, you don't pay any attention, all you do busy is, playing this stupid game or watching these movies or whatever. Why would someone ever work on bad character traits, right, if God's not going to help him? Because, all right, certain things I understand are destructive, right? Certain things bad for your health, gambling, other things, these things are destructive. Good. So a person can say, well, I have to work on that, right? Or I have to stop it because it's destructive behavior, right? So, many therapists will tell you the only way a person can finally stop whatever the addiction is when you hit rock bottom, right? It means you lose everything. You lose your spouse, you lose your kids, you lose the house. Alcoholics will tell you that. Gamblers will tell you that. Only then do they realize, how serious the problem is. Could be some people getting help for it in between, whatever the case is. But the point is a person's never going to be able to overcome this if God doesn't help him, right? The thing is also, unless you understand it's really bad, why would you ever change, right? There's no reason a person would want to change unless you understand how bad it is. That's why we learn Musar, right? That's what ethics, is all about, right? What's the worst character trait a person can have? Right, the Orchos Tzadikim in the ways of the righteous. What does he say in the first gate? First gate is Gaiva. Gaiva means being conceited. So, a person will say, what do you mean? I have to have self-esteem, right? I'm obligated to have self-esteem. That's true, right? But self-esteem does not mean I get to push other people around. I get to step on them like a grape. I think I'm God's gift to the world because of all the Torah I know. And someone asks me a stupid question, why should I waste my time answering? Yeah, question.
Well, yeah, Rabbi, I mean, talking about Gaiva there, talking about conceit, being a big fellow myself, a generally larger than average man, I mean, I have a tendency to bump elbows with people, and I have a bit of a boisterous voice. The problem is, a lot of people see that beyond what it's intended. It's just who I am sometimes. And I've had to endure a lot of animosity with tiny people. I hate to say it. I got to use the term tiny people. They're timid, nervous, and afraid. And the truth is, all I'm doing is saying, hello, how are you? And the reality is, and they challenge it as conceit.
The harder they fall.
Yeah, but the less often, Rabbi.
It could be. It could be, but someone who's got that type of stature, someone once asked a basketball player, over 7 feet tall, more than 2 meters tall, and they ask him, how's the weather up there, right? He's drinking water. He goes, I think it's raining, like whatever. Yeah, but so what if a person's tall? Well, what does that have to do with anything? Right now, imagine if you're feeling like pretty good and, the average height, let's say, in North America is like, 5'3", 5'4", so you're like a foot above them, right? Let's say, give or take. So you're gonna say, look, I'm much taller than most people. Okay, stronger? I don't know, but let's say taller. So it makes you feel good, but at the end of the day, there's one very simple remedy, to cut that down to size. And what is that? So we could say what the Mishnah says. Remember where you came from, know where you're going, and know who you're going to have to give judgment in front of. The person's going to say, I'm God's gift to the world. What are you going to tell them? Biology 101 or 101A. The Mishnah says, where do you come from? Everyone comes from the same place, a putrid drop. Oh, you're going to think you're so great? Because, you come from a putrid drop just like everyone else. Right? After the show, you're going to run to the bathroom, right? Great shakes, if you think about it. Right? Where are you going to go afterwards? You're going to get eaten by worms. And then you're going to have to give judgment in front of God. Now, even without that, someone could say, well, I can't have self-esteem. Not allowed to feel good about myself. Yeah, you are, but you're not allowed to be conceited. And how could you ever be conceited if you come from a putrid drop? What's the answer? Simple answer is because we don't think in those terms. Right? Just actually spoke about this week in my class on duties of the heart. Similar thing, right? Talking about humility. Right? A person, how can a person not be humble if they understand this concept? Right? They understand this Mishnah. So what's the problem? People don't think about the Mishnah. People don't think about it in those terms. How many times have people thought in their lifetime, right? How many times have they thought, if they really think how great they are and that God's gift to the world is, someone once told me I took myself out of the womb almost, like I became who I am despite my parents, blah, blah, blah. You can't be more conceited than that. But okay, right? If someone reminds you and they say, by the way, look where you came from. So how many people, in the last, 6 months, in the last week, how many people have thought about this? Nobody. Nobody thinks about it. Right? But the Avos says, one of the ways to get to humility, to acquire humility, is the fact that exactly that. You're going to think about that on a regular basis. You'll never be conceited. But the obvious answer is, isn't it true? I have an evil inclination. I have free choice. Okay. No one's saying you don't have free choice, right? So even if you have free choice, who says to be an egomaniac? Take any professional athlete. They're all egomaniacs. Every last one of them, right? And they've been told this their whole lives. Look how great you are. They pamper them. They smother them. They bribe them. All these things, whatever it is. And they make them like they're God's gift to the world because they can shoot a basketball or they can throw a football or whatever, right? Whatever it is. So I would say, okay, think more about this. You will not come to be conceited. But I got another idea. Another idea is, where do we come from? Right? Most people come from a town or a city. That's in a state. That's in a country. That's in a continent. Right? That's on a planet. It's in a galaxy. We're getting small. And there are many galaxies. So how can a person ever be conceited? I don't care, how big, how wide, what you can lift. Totally irrelevant. You're an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust, right? As they said in Bill and Ted's Great Adventure, wind, dust, dude, right? That's it. So you want to think you're so great? You come from dirt of the four corners of the earth. God formed us. Okay, that was the first man. How could you think you're so great if that's where we're going back to? Right? We're going to get eaten up. We're certainly going to be eaten up by worms and all that. So the power over here is knowing where we come from, overcoming that evil inclination. Now again, in simple terms, why would we ever want to do that? Right? A person goes to school, whatever, grammar school, middle school, whatever. They're not beating you down with bad, teaching you all about how to fix up bad character traits. What they're telling you is, if you're destructive or disruptive and you don't listen, you're going to the principal, right? He'll speak some sense into you. Good. That's the only mussar you're going to get. Teachers can't give you mussar. You might call the police on them. You can't tell me that. I got free choice. I can do what I want, right? The old saying, someone puts their feet on their desk, right? And someone, and the teacher says, would you do that at home? And of course I would do that at home, right? Whether they would or not, I don't know. But, the person can say, of course, right? My father puts his feet up, so why can't I, put up my feet? They say, we don't do that here. Why not? Because it's not respectful. Why not? When you get to a few why nots, they don't have answers. But I remember being in 6th grade where, taking algebra or pre-algebra, and people asking the question on a regular basis, very, very bright kids. I mean, not me, obviously, but there are other bright kids there, saying, what do I have to know this for? What is the purpose of knowing this? Flusters the teacher, because some of the stuff you're never going to use, right? Some of it, I was teaching math in high school once, and, people were saying, learning algebra, they said, this is, like real life doesn't deal with algebra. I'm like, really? I said, okay, take your car, you put gas in it. You want to find out how many miles per gallon, right? Or miles per liter, right? Everyone else in the world. So I said, how do you figure it out? They go, that's not an equation, right? That's not an algebraic equation. Of course it is, right? Yeah, you have to figure out, okay, how many miles or kilometers did you go, right? And how many gallons is now going to take, right? Or liters or whatever, and you divide, and that's how you figure it out. But I said, I'm going to show you how it's an algebraic equation. Now, for people in yeshiva, obviously, secular studies doesn't have so much weight. They don't take it as seriously, whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean, we've spoken about this, a few times, about the importance or non-importance of college or university, right? So only teach me what I need to know. Don't teach me this other stuff. It is a waste of time, a lot of it. Regardless of all that, if it's a waste of time, why am I learning it? Right? Now, if you go to a secular school with all kinds of other kids, why am I doing this? And they say, if you don't do it, you'll fail the class. Well, that's the only incentive they can hold over you. In other words, if you don't do good and you don't pass the class, you got to take it again. Right? So that is some level of deterrence, but that does not give anyone, an answer. That doesn't give them a higher reason for doing things or whatever. It's all about numbers, right? It's all about how well I do, and I have to do well on a certain number of quizzes and tests or whatever. So, I'll do good so I can finish high school, go to a good college, go to a good university, then I'll go there so I can get a job, have a dog or two, get married, 1 or 2 kids, and that's it, retire, right? That's when I'm going to learn Torah. That's when I'm going to have the time to learn Torah. But I digress here. The point is, nobody in a secular school, not that I grew up in, it could be different. I don't think it's different at all. Someone could tell me it's different depending where you go. I definitely don't think that's the case. Nobody is teaching you ethics. Nobody. They'll tell you can't steal, you can't do this because otherwise you get in serious trouble or whatever, but they're not teaching you ethics. No one's going to a university. I heard a great rabbi once say, nobody's going to university and coming out better than they went in. Ethically. Right now, you could debate that. Someone could say, no, that's not true, whatever. See what people look like before they go in, what their experiences are when they go in and when they come out. They normally do not come out better than they went in. So when it comes to overcoming the evil inclination, God doesn't help you. Why in the world would you work on it? And the only reason you would work on negative things is because they are destructive. And it could be you already lost your shirt, you lost everything in the process, and now you got to figure out either how to try and get it back or how to fit into society. Right? In a lot of these cases, what happens? People hit rock bottom. When they hit rock bottom, as people would say, well, the only place to go is up. You're right. It's the only place to go up. Nobody wants to hit rock bottom. Because once you hit rock bottom, it's very, the process to fix it is very, very difficult. So the question is, why would anyone want to change? If it's not so destructive or whatever, and a person can still function, what's the issue? Right? Why, and we're not taught that. We're definitely not taught that. Certainly not, grammar school or high school or even university. You could take some classes, some courses in ethics. Yeah, that's true. In whatever, Jewish ethics, not Jewish ethics, whatever, and understand there is something, there is something to fixing up character traits. I mean, if you look at the greatest philosophers, Socrates, Aristotle, brilliant minds, but these people in my language were scum, right? Aristotle was known to be 100% a huge womanizer, right? And when his students caught him, they said, hey, what happened to great Aristotle? He said, well, there's 2 different Aristotles. Aristotle does this, is Aristotle the great mind. Judaism says no such thing, right? Judaism says there's no compartmentalization, right? We mentioned this before. There is no such digression. Because you are what you're supposed to do, right? Whatever you do, that's what you're supposed to do. If not, okay, I have to pay. I have to pay a price. But at the end of the day, I can't say, well, if I do this today and I follow God, that's good, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But that other person who does other things, he's not the same person, right? That's his alter ego, right? That's his soul. That's his reincarnated soul doing all the terrible things. No, it's one package. It's a one package deal, which again, we don't believe in compartmentalization. We believe, okay, you do these things, you're going to pay a price. It is forbidden, right? Across the board, it's going to be forbidden. So if it's forbidden, how can I say it's my alter ego? Yeah, question.
Well, no, you're onto something huge here. Just to back it up for me a little bit for Noahides. I mean, so many people in this day and age, yeah, they don't see any repercussion, and therefore, they don't see any need to adjust, or they learn to live with a shortfall or shortcoming, and some of them become belligerent and they don't even realize they're doing it. I just know that ethics, you can't go wrong with it. Yeah. But when you don't have it and you start to justify to yourself that things you're doing may cause you problems when you don't see those problems, I mean, people easily get lost.
Well, it's not just that. Not only people don't see it, but even if they do see it, right? Some people will say, what are you getting so upset about? This is who I am. I'm not going to change. Right, but we saw before in the previous Mishnah that even if everything's going right for this person, God's going to cut him down at some point. Right? It's not like saying, well, I got away with this. Oh, I got away with that. Yeah, you got away with it now. You got away with it for now. right? But eventually, something's going to happen. There's going to be a slip up, whatever the case is, and the person's going to get exposed, right? In other words, God's going to build them up, build them up, build them up, and then just cut them down maybe in their prime, right? We see this a number of times. I hate to use sports analogies, but there are many people, many athletes, going for a huge contract, major contracts, and ready to sign a major contract, and then the offseason get caught doing something stupid, right? They transgress Coffman's 615th commandment of don't be a moron, right? They, domestic violence, whatever it is, caught on camera, gonzo. Never play another game, right? So you'll say they should have been more careful. They should have done it in public. Doesn't matter. They were built up. They got a certain amount of money. This is their time. This is the payday. This is a huge thing they've been waiting for their whole lives. And God says, you know what? You don't deserve it. And just cuts them down, right? Either by something like that or a stupid injury. There's a story about a football player who used to play for the Patriots many years ago, and the guy was a wide receiver and chopped off one of his fingers, right? It was domestic incident, right? Probably wife cut him up or whatever, right? But, his finger was never the same. So, did it destroy his career? It didn't destroy his career totally, but again, if God wants someone to get knocked around and not have that, he'll build them, and then they'll never play a game again. And do you think the people get the message? They don't get the message.
No, rips their heart out.
Yeah. They don't get the message because they've never been taught it. They've always been given everything. And the only problem is they got caught. Security camera. There was a famous case a number of years ago with Ray Rice. I don't know if you remember. He used to play for Baltimore Ravens. And his girlfriend clocked her in front of an elevator, dragged her into an elevator. That was it. Guy never played a game again. Right? He didn't play a game. Done. So you're going to say, well, it's his bad luck. He got caught. That's what they'll say. Not that, it's a terrible thing, rehabilitation, he's gotta go to therapy and all that. That's all by the wayside, right? That's all by the wayside. But they're going to say, it was a terrible, he got caught. That's the only thing. Most people who get caught, it's not remorse. It's not regret. It's just they got caught. Yeah. They got caught doing what they did.
They're sorry they got
caught. Right.
Caught.
And they don't feel bad about what they did. In the end with Bernie Madoff, did he feel really bad? He felt bad. The whole thing came down, okay? How bad did he really feel that he destroyed people's lives and the whole thing was a scam? I don't know. You have to psychoanalyze. I don't think he felt that bad. I think playing with it and the thrill of it was much greater, even though the whole thing come down like a stack of cards. Yeah.
Well, can I just ask a question about, say, brain injury people, like somebody who actually has a debilitation and they can't feel remorse in a sense, or there's a degree of disconnect there. If
disconnect is something else. Disconnect can be fixed, right? They have all these football players with concussions. They're all, committing suicide and other things. That's something else. That's brain damage, right? Someone who's got brain damage, right? They're going to be held liable for what they do. They're still held liable to a certain extent, right? They're not going to be exempt across the board, right? But someone has brain damage, and they do things or whatever, like, for example, someone with dementia, right? Doesn't have Alzheimer's, right? Someone has dementia, and they do something. Are they still going to be liable? They'll be liable to a point, right? But what do you want to do? He doesn't know what he's doing, right? Then he's not in his right mind, right? Not in his right mind. That gets into the whole question, actually I spoke about this week, a much deeper question is, what about suicide, right? I have a friend of ours, they had a cousin committed suicide, but they had, the whole question, according to Judaism, it's one of the worst things you can ever do. And, there are no mourning customs. You're not buried in a Jewish cemetery. You don't get up at resurrection. It's pretty severe. But most people who commit suicide, there's something wrong with them. Right now, so again, it's not really a question for me. It's someone much bigger than me. But, it came out that this person had many years of mental illness, right? So mental illness, if someone commits suicide, that's not necessarily suicide, right? Again, you have to ask someone much bigger than me, but in general, that is not considered suicide because they're not in their right mind. Now, you would tell me, even if someone didn't have mental issues, let's say what's going on now with Corona. You have people out of business, lost everything, can't pay their bills, probably like one of the few times in their life, and they snap, and it's understandable. They're locked up inside. They got people banging down their door, right? They got no money to pay, and they end it. Now, does that mean they're not in their right mind? How far do you want to say, well, that's depression and what caused it? Again, I'm not giving answers here. You need someone much bigger than me, to answer. If it's clear, let's just make it clear that if it's clear there's mental illness, that's not suicide, right? That's definitely not suicide. But anybody who would rather take their life than actually, dealing with the reality is hard, right? I've been on both sides of the fence. Dealing with reality is very hard because if you had it and now you don't, and you got people banging down your doors or whatever, and you're struggling, it's not fun, right? Definitely not pleasant. You want to stick your hand in the sand like an ostrich, right? But, someone like this, their business just, let's say they survive Corona and then through these riots, their business gets destroyed. And now, they borrowed as much as they can. Now they have no money. They have no credit to buy food or something like that. And let's say the husband's the sole provider or the main provider. He feels bad about himself because he can't provide. He can't do what he needs to do. So what does he say? Well, what am I doing here? What am I doing in the world? I can't do anything. So it's better for me it's better for me, to leave the world than be here and suffer. Now, somebody like that, let's ask the question, are they in the right mind? Is that depression? I don't know if it's depression.
My point, Rabbi, was that I was thinking more like bulimics or, somebody who has an eating disorder to the point where they're starving themselves.
No, that's something else.
It's more a cry.
That's something else, right? But if you're talking someone whose mental capacity isn't there, right? In general, let's say someone who's mentally challenged, commits a homicide, whatever. They just go berserk and they end up killing someone. Are they going to be liable? According to the law, they're going to be liable. Are they going to lock them up in a prison, with like really convicted felons or whatever? No, they're not going to do that because the person won't be able to live there. The person will get killed there for sure. Right? Won't be able to survive there. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not liable. They're still in they're not in their right mind. Right? So you could say about suicide in general is that someone who commits suicide across the board, they're not in their right mind. Because, again, I understand people have difficulties. People grew up, let's say, people were raped or something like that, or, pedophiled or whatever the case is. They feel bad about themselves. Some people never get over it because it's such a trauma, whatever. And they go through certain things and it never gets better. So what do? Turn to drugs, this, that, and they die, right? They could die of overdose or they could end up killing themselves because of what they went through. Now you tell me, again, according to Judaism, it's not necessarily their fault. Could be this is what they have to go through, how God organized it. I don't, according to their soul makeup, who knows? Nobody knows, why it happens, but at the end of the day, you don't have a right to give up your life. Now, it could be, in this case, because such a trauma, God's going to have some sort of mercy. I don't know. I'm not playing God, and I certainly didn't play him on TV. These are serious things, right? But at the end of the day, Judaism does not believe, as Christians do, in pass the buck, right? We believe 100% you got to take responsibility for your actions. Now, a person went through a horrible thing, right? Went through a horrible trauma. Is it possible for that person to get help? Should be. Is it going to be easy? It's not going to be easy. There are people that go through different traumas that are able to overcome it. Some just resort to drugs, and that's how they deal with it. The parents don't believe them, whatever, and they don't get accepted, and they say it's all your fault, and some people never get over it, right? And that is a true tragedy, because why should we let some schnook, in my language, destroy someone's life, right? But again, it's a tremendously traumatic thing, and not everybody comes out of it. And if they don't come out of it, is it for us to judge, right? That's, somebody went through the Holocaust. Give an example. Yeah. Someone who went through the Holocaust. Can we ever judge if they lost their faith? Could we, God forbid, ever judge what they went through? We can't judge, right? If they saw family members killed, tortured in front of their eyes, right? Anyone who had faith after the Holocaust, these are the real righteous people, right? But someone who lost their faith, because of what went on, there's no way you can judge such a thing, right? I'll give an example. I once spoke at a Jewish community center about reincarnation. I was interviewing for a job, be a rabbi of a synagogue, so I thought that was a nice topic to speak about, and I spoke for 40 minutes about the evil inclination versus the good inclination. And then I spoke for 10 minutes about reincarnation, right? About transmigration of soul. Again, the first thing I mentioned was, I just want everyone to know reincarnation is a Jewish concept. When I mentioned that, like 3 people fainted. They go, really? It's a Jewish concept? How can it be a Jewish concept? I thought it was a Hindu thing, whatever. Any case, after the lecture, after I spoke, so whatever, I took questions. People asked me different things, and there was a woman there, a much older woman, who'd gone through the Holocaust, who actually survived the Holocaust, and she came up to me and she said, "Rabbi, you're very, very clever." Rabbi, like this, like really deep, Hungarian accent, and she went on about what some of the things she went through during the Holocaust. Now, somebody like that, you're never going to say, well, there was so much assimilation, you have to understand, it was a decree, and God wiped so many people out, but that's not going to help her. She's not interested in an answer, right? You're never going to give someone like that an answer. Now, so this person was going on, and then someone came in and tried to answer her, and I pushed this person away. I'm like, just let her talk. She's not interested in an answer. And as clever as I may be, I'm never going to come up with an answer that's going to be satisfactory of why her family got blown to bits, right? That's not for us to know. Now, if we do understand what possibly went on during that time that brought about God's ire and God's anger, and he wanted to wipe out so many Jews in Europe or whatever, that's one thing. But someone who went through the Holocaust, they can't hear it. It's something that they'll never be able to hear. And at the same time, person has to realize, there are things beyond us. And what they went through, if their faith is intact, they are the real righteous people, not us. Right? They are the real righteous people. And if someone, God forbid, who survived, and they lost their faith 100%, we can't have any claims because we're not in their shoes, right? We didn't see what they saw, and to see family members get, tortured or die in front of your face, or how they had to survive and all that, we can't even imagine. People are too busy complaining about wearing masks outside, and other things. And God forbid, we may have to go back to lockdown with the rates, going up and all that, complaining about how difficult it is. I saw someone put up a post and said what people had to go through World War II, World War I, during the Spanish flu, different things. This is nothing. We're suffering. All right. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying anyone who gets it, it's a walk in the park. We're not saying that. But for goodness sakes, we're the only ones who are suffering. This is the most suffering we've ever had. Come on, we don't know what it's like. I remember waiting in line for a store to open or to let people in, and there was a guy there, grew up in Russia. He said this is normal. For Russians, they wait 4 hours in line. Lucky if they get bread or not, and there's no guarantee. They're waiting in line. It's cold, it's hot, whatever the case is. They're waiting in line an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and they're hoping they're going to get bread. They're hoping they're going to get meat. They're hoping they're going to get something else. And it could be they get up to the front finally. Imagine standing there 2 hours, freezing cold. And they say, sorry, we don't have any more. Everything's gone. That's the norm. For them, that was the norm. We complain if they don't, go to a store, they don't have our favorite peanut butter. It's like, hey, where's that peanut butter? Where's these cookies? People go out of their minds. They don't know what it means to suffer. We're living in the wealthiest generation in the history of man. Okay, some have it easier, some have it harder, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's the wealthiest generation. If you're talking about the wealthiest generation, we're suffering a little bit. Yeah, masks are uncomfortable. I agree. Especially when it's very hot out. It's also uncomfortable. And you got to pray for 40 minutes or half an hour, whatever. It's uncomfortable. True. But you're doing it for someone else. You're not doing it for yourself. Right? You want to make sure someone else, doesn't get sick. But even with all that, you want to compare, we're suffering so much. You want to compare it to previous generations? Not even close. Right? We don't even know what suffering, God forbid, is. Right? So we mentioned, so how do we get on to all this? Because we spoke about fighting the evil inclination. Right? Fighting who is considered someone strong is someone who overcomes their evil inclination. Now, again, these type of things you'll never get in school. Right? Fighting, in secular schools about fighting evil inclinations. Right? About fighting all these different things. Why not? Because it doesn't resonate. They'll say, do what you want to do. Right? That's what the kids will answer. What are you telling me what to do? I got free choice. I can do what I want as long as I'm not disturbing anyone, hopefully. Right? I can do what I want. So if I can do what I want, why are you telling me I have to be better? I have to be more ethical. Why? All these people aren't ethical. Why do I have to listen? Right? So at the end of the day, we certainly believe either I'm going in the right direction, right, or I'm going in the wrong direction. And someone who has real power, real strength is someone who wants to overcome that evil inclination. In the secular world, this doesn't exist. Right? This idea 100% doesn't exist. So say, okay, you shouldn't have to, somebody once say that, between meat and milk, right? For Jews, some have to wait 6 hours, some have to wait 3 hours, depending on the custom. Most have to wait 6 hours if you eat meat, or chicken before you can eat milk, right? So someone said, okay, if you have a child, certain age, the child, you can't let them eat milk and meat straight away. It depends how the age, right? But you have to start training them from a certain age. Wait 1 hour, couple hours, whatever. And someone, obviously a secular Jew, would make this comment, and why do you have to make them suffer? Why do you have to make them suffer? It's not about making them suffer. There's a reality. Is the Torah true or it's not true? Are there things that we can't do? Some people say, I'm not going to eat meat because I want to, I want to have chocolate. They're not like me. They don't like parve chocolate. They don't like chocolate that doesn't have any milk in it, right? Bittersweet chocolate. So they say, okay, I'm not going to eat meat. It's called fleischophobia. Fleisch means meat, in Yiddish. So it's like they have meatophobia. They're afraid, right? They're afraid because I want to eat dairy. I want to eat dairy straight away. So, okay, you get around that. But, if you eat bittersweet chocolate, you don't have an issue. But that being said, there's an obligation, right? In the laws of kashrus, that's what a Jew has to do. You have to separate between meat and milk. Why? Because it's a decree, right? It's an absolute decree. I'm not saying it makes sense, right? The laws of kashrus in general do not make logical sense, a lot of it. So regardless of that, we still have to keep it. So what do we have to do? We have to train our kids. And if we have to train our kids, that's not an act of cruelty. Oh, that's terrible. You're making that poor child suffer. No, they're understanding they can't do whatever they want. They understand there's limitations because God Almighty says so. That's it. You're training them to be good Jews. You're not training them to do whatever the heck they want, right? That's called being ownerless. That's called, doing whatever you want and has no room in Judaism. Right? So a person also, let me just finish this Mishnah, says that person should greet others with a happy face. And if you do so, well, you smile at someone, they'll smile back. Right? They'll want to be with you. They'll want to listen to you. So therefore, we should obviously do proper things in the eyes of the Torah. Certainly by helping others, even if we're not going to get compensated for it, we help others, right? And other people will like us. Why? Because we're doing things that people like. So if I show somebody or somebody shows somebody a happy face, they're more likely to be drawn to them. If you show them a sour face, you push them away, right? You push them away. Now, last thing here is what's the connection for fixed times for learning and greeting people with a smile? That even someone who learns Torah and he's learning very strong, he still has to think about other people. In other words, if he learns with a study partner, can't treat him like dirt. Every time he comes up with something you don't think he's right, or maybe he's right, you don't want to admit it, or whatever the case is, right? You have to show respect, right? You have to be nice. You have to greet them, with a nice face, even if you're tired, even if other things are going wrong or whatever. Also, saying little and doing a lot is also connected. Why? Because if you don't talk that much, you're not going to get an argument, right? You certainly not. That'd be one way to end most arguments. And then, if you're not going to argue with somebody, and you're actually learning to, oh yeah, I agree, maybe I don't, whatever, but you don't say too many things, then the other person's going to be happy. It's going to be much easier to greet another person with a smile. Now, if you're learning very strong and there's a heated argument, still doesn't mean you can't be happy with the other person. Right? Because obviously you want to prove your side. You don't necessarily want to listen to the other side, but you want to get to the truth. So you're going back and forth. In the end, you can still be friends, right? There's, anyone who's ever seen like a real war, in Torah, obviously they're showing respect one to the other. Obviously they think the other side is wrong, right? But at the end of the day, that's how people become great, right? They sharpen their minds. So to speak. But if it's done in a way where I'm going to show you up, right, and I'm gonna show how much more I know and you don't know, okay, that's something else, right? That's definitely something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Rabbi, I actually had my real first encounter with a Karaite this week who, on social media, of course, who just decided he was going to pick a fight with me on a post. And, I just, after a couple of conversations, I realized this isn't going to change or slow down. I hit him with your checkmate,
Right.
Deuteronomy. It slowed everything down after a while.
Meaning what? That they were actually,
trying to encourage me, just to get away from the oral tradition and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like,
but they didn't give you an answer.
Oh, they gave long pages worth of answers, and it's like, Anyways, I just,
what we say, keep on digging.
Yeah.
Keep on digging. That's it. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to change you, throw you off topic, but some people just pick fights, argue needlessly, and trying to be happy. It was a positive post I put, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get hit from left field.
Right, but why do they do that? Well, what's the whole point? Because they want to make you look bad, right?
Exactly. So no other reason, right?
It's not, if it would be something
tunnel vision.
If it would be something they're interested in truth, that'd be one thing. That certainly be one thing. But a lot of these people, as someone told me, by messianics, they don't care. They don't care if they're contradictions. They don't care about anything else. And they don't care if they don't have an answer, right? It doesn't bother them. So, so here, what are we speaking about? We're talking about, somebody learns with somebody else, and they're showing proper respect. They may disagree. They certainly may disagree. But at the end, after they finish learning, there's still a smile there, right? They're not, they're not enemies, right? So the students, just to actually bring this a little bit closer to home, the students of Rabbi Akiva, 24,000 students during the time between Passover and the 33 days, 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died, right? So that means more than 700 a day of, some of the greatest people in that generation were dying. So the Talmud asked the question, this great Rabbi Akiva, his great students, what happened? What happened over here? So the answer is they didn't show respect one to the other. They didn't have proper respect. Now, you ask me if they're great rabbinic scholars. We just said, how could you forget somebody else? If you show a smile, right, they're going to want to have a connection to you and all that. How could they not have shown respect? These are the greatest people in the world, right? Just about. If they're the greatest people in the world, how could 700 died and not gotten the message? Because they got caught up in themselves, right? This is not really an answer. It's very hard to answer, right? But a simplistic way of saying it would be that they didn't internalize the message. They're learning Torah day and night, right? Backwards and forwards and this and that. So what happened to ethics? What happened about looking out for someone else? Not just about learning, right? Learning, is very interesting. A lot of mental gymnastics, you have to internalize the message, right? And if you don't internalize the message, could you learn at a high level, but you still treat somebody like a piece of dirt? 100%, right? You certainly could do that, but you're going to say, but it's not in the spirit of the law. It's not what the Torah wants from me, because the Torah tells me many times, don't do this, don't do that. Don't be haughty, don't be conceited. Don't take revenge. Don't hate your brother in your heart. Like all these things. And many times, Torah has ethical laws. So very good. So some of the greatest scholars of all time didn't get it. They didn't know what the Torah said. Of course, they got it, right? I don't think there's any question. They certainly got it. They understood. There are certain things they didn't put into practice as well, right? Which really boggles the mind. Because how can you learn Torah and be unethical, right? Meaning, how can you learn Torah and not think that ethics is important, right? Bertrand Russell taught ethics; he was totally unethical. Again, that's how we got to it in the beginning, right? You cannot compartmentalize, so you can't just learn Torah like mental gymnastics. Become a great rabbinic scholar, which you can, which actually gets into the next Mishnah, about accepting a teacher upon yourself. That we have a lot to speak about, right? But in general, how can that be? How can that be? If you're learning Torah at the highest level, then ethics has to go hand in hand. If ethics doesn't go hand in hand, then the Torah you're learning is worthless. It's 100%. It's 100%. Worthless. And if this is your rabbi, go find someone else, right? If he's totally unethical, right, in different ways, one of my rabbis once said, learn under someone, unbelievable Talmudic genius, lasted about 2 weeks. He says this person's personal conduct was atrocious, was absolutely atrocious. He said he couldn't stand it. He says, too much of a contradiction. How can someone be such a great mind and contradict? I can understand it. By Aristotle, he doesn't have an ethical code, right? By the non-Jews, there is no ethical code. I'm not saying according to the Torah. What ethical code do they have? Yeah, it says don't be promiscuous. True. So they'll say, okay, but don't get caught. And they'll do other things, don't get caught. Doesn't mean there's no moral code. There is a moral code, right? And non-Jews have an obligation to abide by what the laws of the land say, right? So therefore, whether you get caught or not doesn't matter. It's a deterrent, right? So therefore, you got to abide by what it says. Now you tell me there are certain things, maybe loopholes. Because even if I don't, is someone going to say, on the books of the law of the land, you're not allowed to get angry? Who says? It might not be good for you personally. Or let's say don't take revenge, right? What's the classic case of taking revenge? Your lawnmower broke, you ask your friend to borrow it, and he says no, right? He comes back later, a week later, your lawnmower's fixed. Can I borrow your lawnmower? He says no. I'm not letting you borrow mine because you didn't let me borrow yours. That's taking revenge, right? That's tit for tat. Now, most people would probably
Hatfield and McCoy's, yeah.
Yeah, most people would probably say that, in an ethical world, it probably makes sense, right? In other words, why are you being vengeful on someone else? They say, well, I needed their lawnmower. They wouldn't let me use it. I really needed it, so why should I let him use it? Now, you could say that's logical to a point, but at the end of the day, if you break it down, is that really something I should be doing? What would they tell you? You got to be bigger than them. You got to be not taller, bigger. You You got to be bigger. You have to be bigger in the sense where, like, what are you worrying about what they did? Forget about what they did. It's not your obligation. Your obligation is if you can lend it, the person's relatively trustworthy, so lend it to him. I had a case many years ago before their cell phones and I was a yeshiva student, and you can only call from a payphone, and they had these coins that if you call the States, it would be like 20 of them just go chung 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 chung, whatever. So I remember I was in the middle of speaking to my parents, and whatever, they'd call me back or whatever, and someone was waiting for the phone. So I spoke to my parents like once a week, and someone got impatient and basically said, "I need the phone," and hung up the phone. Totally hung up the phone. Right? Click the phone. I was like, he's like, "I need the phone." Now, what did the person do? Well, what was so important for this person to do? He called up the person at the pizza store, and he's like, "How come this pizza store is not open?" Like, you idiot, disconnected me. Speaking to my parents because you were worried about, you were hungry and the pizza store wasn't open, right, when it should have been. Now, if this person were to come into the study hall later that day, the next day, a week later, whatever it is, and he comes over and says, "Oh, by the way, do you have a pen I can borrow?" I said, "You want to borrow my pen?" I said, "I'm going to stab you with it. Get out of my face." Why in the world should I give you my pen? You cut me off, you idiot. You cut me off. Why? Who gives you the right to do that? Now, that scenario, if that would happen, you have to overcome that evil inclination. And if he comes and says, or she comes, whoever it is, and says, "Can I borrow your pen for a second?" you have to give it to them. No regrets, no remorse, no tinge of hatred in your heart. That now you're gonna tell me, come on, this isn't, is this really such a big thing? This is a big thing, because if I transgress and I have any tinge of remorse in my heart, and I say, why should I give it to him? Even if you give it to him with a smile, but in your heart you're saying, I shouldn't give this to him, right? Look what he did. That's revenge. That's a Torah prohibition. That's a Torah prohibition. Now, this is what.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. I just wanted to ask, what about those that are abusers? I mean, do we not have to be conscious and say no at some point? No, I'm not going to give you this. If they're subtly abusing, or they don't even know they're abusing, and it's legitimately not revenge.
Physical or mentally?
Well, let's just say, like, I have known people over the years that are prone to be takers and not givers in any way, shape, or form. And I have to get to the point where, boom, I got to clip it. I got to clip it for my own sanity, or you'll just leave me dry.
That you're allowed to do, because you don't want to be damaged. You don't want to be taken advantage of. Right?
So it's not revenge in that instance.
That's not revenge. That you're just guarding yourself from being abused. In that sense, there are people, myself included, I don't like fake conversations. I don't like superficiality. Right? I'm a very big hater of superficiality. Yeah. So, if I know that, someone's not going to reciprocate, even if it's a family member, right? Say, "Oh, blood is thicker than water." Forget about that. Even if it's a family member, and they're not going to reciprocate, and you just have aggravation from it because you put in all this effort, you get nothing in return. Right? Why in the world are you going to invest time? It's not taking revenge. That's just guarding yourself from being hurt. Right? In other words, you want to have a relationship.
I didn't mean to take you away from the you were on such a swing with revenge.
No, it doesn't matter. But the point is that, you don't want to be taken advantage of. And by not being wanted to take advantage of doesn't mean I have to sit there and be abused. Right? In other words, why do I have to put myself into that? I don't have to. Right? So in your case, you can cut it off. Right? You that's not taking revenge. Right? That's making yourself sane. That's keeping your sanity. Right? Because somebody like that is, let's say, who's only a taker.
One-way door.
And you know that they're not going to give ever. Right? So what do I have to put the effort in? A while ago I told this to somebody. I said, "Listen, you've never cared about this, never cared about that. I'm not wasting my time. Why should I waste my time?"
Not revenge in it.
I said the onus is on you, not on me. That was it.
I know people like that, though, will tend to tell you it's revenge. You're doing this because of that. You're doing this because of that, when it's never the
but I
case.
told this person, it's gone on for a number of years, many, many years. He agreed. He didn't disagree. Totally agreed. Right? So I said, onus, balls in your court. That was my answer. I said, balls in your court because I'm not making the effort. Because I can tell you with a straight face, and I wasn't kidding, I said, I have nothing to gain. You have nothing to offer me. I said, you want a show? Okay. You don't want a show? That's also fine. I don't have to waste my time. So I wanted to point out before your interruption, I wanted to point out that revenge in that sense, that's what God wants. Meaning, that's the level he wants you at, that even if someone comes to you, and I had this in my mind. In this study hall where I was learning, if this guy ever came in and he said, I need to borrow your pen, can I borrow your pen for a second? You have to give it with a full heart. If you don't give it with a full heart, that's called taking revenge. So you're going to say, really? Is that what really God wants? Is that the level he wants? That's the level he wants. Right? He's putting this obstacle in front of you to see if you really believe what he says or not. Now, again, I could say I'm not, if this person, let's say, is not going to return it. He's going to cause damage with it. Like my lawnmower example. I don't have to lend it to him. I can say, no, I'm not lending it to you. That's legitimate. That's not taking revenge. Right? But if you're not gonna give it to him because he didn't give it to you, that's something else. So you're gonna tell me God wants us to live to a very high standard. Yes, he does. Right? It's not impossible. This is not impossible to get over. Right? But it's very hard. Especially someone obnoxious like hung up the phone on you, and the only reason he did it is because he was impatient, wanting pizza. Come on. You don't get anything more shallow than that. Yeah, so that ends Mishnah 15. So I think as a good segue, we're not going to cover that much ground, right? But let's see the 16th Mishnah. The 16th Mishnah says, Rabbi Gamliel used to say, now we're speaking about Rabbi Gamliel, accept the teacher upon yourself. Oh, we're going to spend a lot of time on that. And remove yourself from uncertainty. Do not give excess tithes by estimating instead of measuring. All right, we're going to see what this means. Now, let's just give way of introduction. What is it? We saw before you have to acquire a teacher. Acquiring a teacher means even if I have to pay them, right? Even if, you might say, well, he teaches Torah, he should teach me for free, right? Moshe Rabbeinu, we're going to see later. Moshe Rabbeinu taught for free, right? He didn't charge anyone. True, because God made him rich in the desert, right? I had a fraudulent rabbi, whatever. I made a blistering video a few weeks ago. The person I'm not even going to give a soapbox to, right? But he said, he charges for his class, blah, blah, blah. I got a real job. Okay, you got a real job. So what? What does it do with anything? According to the code of Jewish law, am I allowed to charge for what I do? Yes. Can I be exorbitant? No. Right? Okay, there has to be a limit. It has to be a limit. But, I did get a chuckle out of that. Because the person has no credentials whatsoever. He's like, I get a real job. As opposed to me. He doesn't do anything. He scams people. Right? That's what I do. I scam people. Okay. Whatever. Right? So even if you have to acquire a teacher, and that means he's got all this knowledge, and you may just actually have to fork over some money to get him to teach you, there's nothing wrong with that. Right? Now, what does it mean over here? Now, that's acquiring a teacher. What does it mean to accept upon yourself? Accept the teacher upon yourself. I think this is much more difficult. Why is it much more difficult? Certainly someone coming out of Christianity, coming out of paganism. I think this is even more difficult than moving to a Jewish community. For people who want to convert, I think that's probably the most difficult issue, stopping a person from conversion. Again, whether it's a spousal issue or not, that's also an issue, right? But I think, one of the most important things about moving to a community, people can't do it or whatever, right up there. If that's one, then 1A is, when you come out of Christianity, why in the world should I listen to you? Why in the world should I listen to another man? All these other men were liars. You're right. They sold you a bag of bones. They absolutely 100% lied, and they left you ignorant and the rest of the church ignorant because because they don't have answers, right? You're not allowed to ask questions. So they'll say, well, they thought they had the truth. Well, very good. Now you understand they don't have the truth. So, okay, why should I listen to you? Right? In other words, why should I accept, upon myself a teacher? This is the probably hardest, the hardest thing. And that's where the Messianics come from. And that's where the Karaites come from. And they'll say, and I've mentioned this a number of times and still get slammed, as it says in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 10 and 11, you have to accept what the rabbis tell you. Because the Torah tells me clear, I have to accept the Kohanim, the priest. What they say is what I have to do for all generations. Who are the priests today? They're the rabbis. Why should I listen to the rabbis? This is where the question comes from. Why do I have to listen to them? They're only human. They're only people. And we got blasted and we got lost by listening to people in the church. You're right, because they sold you a bag of bones. Now, you want to show me where in the Talmud is wrong and where the rabbis are wrong? The only thing you can say is what most people say is, there's another verse in the book of Deuteronomy. What does the verse in Deuteronomy say? You can't add and subtract, right? And that's what the rabbis do. They add and subtract. God forbid. And therefore they say, I'm only going to listen to God. So why should I listen to you? So I say, okay, let's backtrack. Who else you going to listen to? You're going to listen to Reform rabbi who's probably either not Jewish or gay or a lesbian, right? You're going to listen to them? You're going to listen to a conservative rabbi who's not much better, he's only 10 years behind, 60, 70% into marriage? I don't think you're going to listen to them, right? Because as much as they've changed in the Torah, mentioned many times, it's a disaster and it doesn't work. If they could prove to me philosophically that it works and it can be passed down, good, right? Show me it works, it can be passed down. That's not the issue here, right? Now, if you don't listen to Reform, you don't listen to conservative, who else you going to listen to? You only have one other choice. Modern Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, whatever, and we have a track record, right? We have a track record of having 90% or more success rate passing it down. But now you're going to tell me I have an issue. And the issue is, okay, but all the things the rabbis are telling us, and the laws of kashrus, right? And when we speak about the Talmud, and the laws of kashrus, and the laws of Shabbos, most of these laws, 100% rabbinic. You're right. 100% it's rabbinic. There are very few Torah laws. I agree. Noahides. Where do Noahides come from? The Talmud itself. I can show you the pages. That's where it comes from. It's a rabbinic invention. Call it whatever you want. Checkmate against me. It's rabbinic. I didn't say it's in the Torah. 100% it's rabbinic. But they're going to say, but that's adding to the Torah. So then the question is, do you believe in authenticity of the oral law or not? Right? So I made one video, made 3 videos on Tanakh Talk. The first one is why you need oral law. Why there are a million questions that the Talmud asks that the Torah doesn't. The Torah is very vague. Right? I'm not going to go through all the things. The Torah is extremely vague. So if that's true, and we see there's a need for interpretation, so then you're going to say, how do I know they're right? Right? Forget about a game of telephone. Forget about why it's oral. How do I know that they're right? Right? They're human. They are fallible. They can make mistakes. But doesn't God grant them the license? He grants them the license even if he disagrees. Now, somebody took me to task on this. They thought it was the funniest thing and stupidest thing I've ever said, which, okay, I've said a lot of things, but there's a Talmud, there's a piece of Talmud, it's a difference of opinion between Rabbi Eliezer and the rabbis. And Rabbi Eliezer says, if the halacha is like me, let the stream go backwards. What happens? Stream goes backwards. If the halacha is like me, let this tree be uprooted. Tree gets uprooted. He said, if the halacha is like me, let the walls of the study hall start caving in. And all of a sudden, the walls start to shake. right? The study hall is about to be destroyed. So what the rabbis say? Now the rabbis, the majority. Torah tells me clear, right, that I have to go according to the majority, right? For good, not for bad, right? So therefore, what happens? The rabbis scream out, Lo b'shamayim. Torah's not in heaven. Oh, sorry. Before that, there's a heavenly voice. Talmud tells me there's a heavenly voice. What does the heavenly voice say? The halacha is always like Rabbi Eliezer. It's like God saying the halacha is like him. Jewish law is like him. Right? So what are you doing? What are you doing going against him? What do the rabbis say? The rabbis say, Lo b'shamayim. Torah is not in heaven. We have the right to be koveya, to fix the law. Since we have the right to fix the law, we have no obligation to listen to you. And the walls stop shaking. And God says, as the Talmud continues, my children have beaten me. Now, someone ripped me to shreds, or tried to rip me to shreds, saying that's the stupidest thing ever. Why is it the stupidest thing ever? Is the Torah in heaven? No. If it was in heaven, we'd have to jump up to heaven in order to keep it, right? But there's a general rule, right? If you knew anything, because you can't read Hebrew, you certainly can't read Aramaic, right? That's for sure. And you don't hold by the Talmud, so I can't help you. But what does it say? The Torah says you go according to the majority. Now, if God himself says, this is the law, what is the Karaite going to say? You listen to God. God, that's what God says. You got to listen to him. I got one problem. God can't go against what he says. And in the Torah itself, what does the Torah tell me? I just told you, right? Book of Exodus chapter 23, verse 2 tells me you go according to the majority. If you go according to the majority, I don't care what God says. It's irrelevant. He cannot go against what he said. If he can't go against what he said, then the rabbis are right, Rabbi Eliezer wrong, and God, go back to the corner that you were in, no offense, go to where you were, and we're holding according to Rabbi Eliezer. We're going according to the rabbis. Rabbi Eliezer's wrong. We don't hold of him, and that's it. Checkmate. Why? Now, someone's going to say, what does that prove? That doesn't prove anything. No, that proves the mitzvah to listen to the rabbis, right? Even if God says I disagree. That's what it means. Even if God says, I believe otherwise, why is he going to let his offspring, not his offspring, why is he going to let his people go against him? How could God let his own people, give him the proverbial finger in my language and say, screw you, God forbid, bad language here, say, screw you, I'm going to do what I want. We're going to listen to what the rabbis say. You know what? We have precedent. We have precedent because the Torah tells me. Torah tells me clear. Exodus chapter 23, verse 2, I go according to the majority. If I go according to the majority, then the rabbis say, we're the majority. So how can you be a Karaite? Can't go. You have to go according to the majority. Nah, the rabbis are changing this and that. But what about the majority? That's checkmate number 2. What do you do with that issue? You can say, no, that's not what it means. What does it mean? What does going according to the majority mean? Right? But again, no matter how you slice or how you want to look at the Talmud, if the Talmud has authority, and we believe it does, it's one thing. If you don't believe in the rabbis at all, then it doesn't matter what I say. Right? It's totally irrelevant. But you're only going to hold and pick and choose by the rabbis, right? Because you have the text that has vowels. You would never have translation, right? Because of the text. How are you going to translate it? You can't translate it, so you pick and choose. How the Messianics wear tzitzis. How do they do other things that are based on oral law? So it's either you hold by oral law, as I always say, or you don't. You can't, it's like being a little bit pregnant. Are you pregnant or you're not pregnant? That's it. What are you arguing about? It's either you hold by this principle or you don't. If you don't hold by the principle, then there's nothing I can say. It doesn't really matter. But if you do hold by some things, then you can't pick and choose. You certainly can't pick and choose. So listening to the rabbis against Rabbi Eliezer, and we hold across the board in most cases. There are some exceptions, But in most cases in Talmudic law, we go according to what the rabbis say. You go according to the majority. There are a few occasions that we go according to a minor opinion, but they're very few. The majority opinion is you go according to the majority. That's it. So if you have to go according to the, if you have to go according to the majority, then what's God saying over here? You know, that God says, I say that the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer. So what do the rabbis say? We don't care what you say in this case because we're the majority, right? If we're the majority, God can't answer that because God cannot go against something he already said. This is internal logic. Now, the only other argument they can make, right, which is the argument everybody says, is the fact that the rabbis are adding or subtracting to the Torah. Right, and that we mentioned many times why that's not the case. You know, but again, if you have to listen to them and they are the majority, then it doesn't matter what they do. You have to listen. But obviously, if they, you know, if we keep their law and whatever they say, we do. So therefore, that cannot mean that they're adding or subtracting to the Torah. It can't mean that because how could you listen to them and that's what's going on? Right? Obviously, God's not going to allow that to happen. So why do you allow it? Yeah, question.
Well, I'm just trying to take this notion that you're stating a little deeper here and go back even maybe earlier times to say like Jeremiah, where the majority was prophesying lies, if you will.
Right.
And, you know, Jeremiah was sent to, you know, speak in a different direction, but the majority still insisted Jeremiah was wrong. Threw him in, you know, in the well and whatever. And,
okay.
The point is that they went into captivity.
Okay, they didn't listen. But he was a prophet. The question is why they didn't listen. That's a good question, but yeah.
But my point being, people still followed the majority and went into captivity. And I think Hashem is really trying to show something clear that the majority will cause the flow according to Hashem's will. Even though Jeremiah prophesied correctly against them.
Again, he's a prophet. You cannot go against what the prophet says. And, you know, since the temple was still in existence, they still never thought the temple would be destroyed. And he's telling them this is what's going to happen. Now, the majority could go according to themselves for the wrong reason, for the wrong thing. That's forbidden. In other words, if they say, well, we're going to go according to the majority, but the majority is bad or evil, that's totally forbidden. It's only whenever it's something for good. But in this case, they made a serious mistake. And the serious mistake is they didn't listen to the prophet. Now, everyone agrees Jeremiah is a prophet. Jewish people don't disagree. Don't disagree. He's a prophet. If he himself is a prophet, you have to ask another question, right? We're good at asking questions here. I don't know if the answers are any good, but the question is, why didn't they listen to the prophet? He's saying this is the word of God, right? This is what everyone gets hung up on, Jeremiah chapter 30, the new covenant, right? So to speak, we're not chosen anymore. It's all about JC, blah, blah, blah. And he's screaming at them. All right, whatever. He's screaming at them, you know, the Jewish people saying, all right, I'm ripping up this covenant. That's what it sounds like. But what's the context? Context is, and everything's in context, right? The context is Jeremiah is chastising them and saying you're not going according to the original covenant. You're not going according to what God set out. You're not listening. So he said, if you're not listening, I want you to regroup. I want you to repent. And I want you to re-strengthen that covenant. Right? That's why it's called a new covenant. It's a new covenant strengthened in the old. So, why is it called a new covenant? Good, to mess people up. Right? But that's what it means. In the context, that's what it means. It means reconnecting, making the new covenant stronger than the old, which is the same. Which is exactly the same. So the Christians may not like that. They'll say, but it says new covenant. You're right. It says new covenant, but read the beginning of the chapter. Read what Jeremiah is saying. You are going against this old covenant. I want you to reconnect. He's not telling you to make a new covenant. Not only that, it's internal logic. Because the Torah says you can't add or subtract. So what mitzvahs are we going to add or subtract to that new covenant? Jeremiah is a prophet. He can't go against Moshe Rabbeinu. right? Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest of all prophets, one of the 13 principles of faith, right? According to the Rambam, right? And according to Maimonides, the Torah says clear, greatest of all prophets. If he's the greatest of all prophets, you cannot contradict him. If you can't contradict him, what's this new covenant? How can it be? Now we're going to make up our own new laws. We're going to have a whole new set of laws. That can't be. Because you have to remember, God cannot go against what he wrote and what he passed down to Moshe. So then, again, it comes back to the whole thing. So how are the rabbis allowed to do what they do? It never ends, right? It never ends. Either you understand what they're doing is making a fence around the Torah and not adding to it so you don't transgress something more severe, or you don't. And if you don't understand that, that's it. That is what it means. It's not adding or subtracting. So you're going to say, I don't like that answer. That's not what they do. Blah, blah, blah.
No, there's something deep in there, Rabbi. There's something deep in there.
Adding and subtracting, again, is like, it's like adding an extra fringes on your tzitzis. It's like adding different compartments in your tefillin. That's adding. You're adding on to what the mitzvah is. Subtracting means I take one away, right? I take one of these fringes away. I take part of it away. But at the end of the day, do you know what tefillin are? You know what making frontlets between your eyes are? Of course you don't, right? We understand it, right? Making totafot, making these frontlets. Totafot's not even a Hebrew word. It's an African word. Rashi says, a Coptic word. Coptic people, whatever, right? It's their words. How do you know what it is? How would you know what tefillin are? Well, God's going to tell me. Great. What are they? Tefillin. How do we know? Because that's what the rabbis tell us. Right? So we just go around in circles. You want to argue it? You can argue it. But again, either you believe the Torah is true, and if the Torah is true, there's a mitzvah to listen to rabbis, or there's not, right? But you can't pick and choose. And if you do pick and choose, just admit it, right? Then they don't want to have any, they don't want to have any issues. But the Talmud we brought up, right, states clear you have to go according to the majority. And this is the majority for good, not for bad. Why? In other words, why would the Talmud say my children are beating me? Because God understands that the eternal logic of Talmud. They're right. I have to go according to the majority. But God Himself says the halach is like Him, but we don't live in heaven. Right? The Torah is not in heaven. If the Torah was in heaven, we'd have to go up there and keep it. But it's not. So the fact is, God has to listen to us. Right? And whatever we keep, God has to, that's what we do. Right? According to what the rabbis tell us. So therefore, you want to say, this doesn't make sense, and and like this is the craziest thing I ever heard, that God says that the Jewish people beat me, then explain why the halacha is not like Rabbi Eliezer. Right? There's internal logic. And the internal logic says I have to go according to the majority. If I have to go according to the majority, that's it. Yeah.
Rabbi, people just want to know that the authority is genuine and not arbitrary. We, of the 70 nations that have embraced Noahide, turn to the rabbis. We understand, or we want to grasp more that how Hashem rules everything. But
you have to realize one thing. In this week's Torah portion that we just read, we speak about the red heifer. The red heifer is the quintessential law that says that someone became impure. Cohen takes the ashes of this cow that's totally red. It's got no, it's never been worked and whatever. And you take these ashes and you put it on the person. He becomes pure. The Cohen becomes impure. Makes no sense, right? Logically, you cannot become impure if he becomes pure, right? It's something totally illogical. So Rashi says the nation is going to come and say, what is this? Come on, this is a joke. This doesn't make logical sense. You're right. Because everything we do in the Torah itself is a divine decree. Now, don't steal, and don't kill. They're all divine decrees. One of the great rabbis of the last generation in America, Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, blessed memory, brings down in Parshas Korach, speaks about how great Korach was, how could he made such a mistake, going against Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron, because he says, I just actually speaking about this by the third meal, and he says that Korach, as great as he was, made one very significant mistake. right? Wasn't he there? Didn't he survive Egypt? Yeah. Did you see the miracles? Yeah. Did you see the miracles in the desert? 100%. He was the one that carried the ark and didn't die, right? He's on a very high level, not a fool, right? Certainly not a fool. So that being said, how did he make such a mistake? So Moshe Feinstein says he made such a mistake because he didn't internalize the message. And if he would have internalized the message, he wouldn't have made such a mistake. What was the message? Everything that's in the Torah itself, Moshe Rabbeinu's not doing on his own. He's not playing favorites. None of this. Everything is a divine decree. Whether you understand things more, you understand things less, the whole thing is 100% a divine decree. That's it. Had Korach understood that, and we're going to see about Korach one day, probably next millennium, we'll get there, about the fact that desire and jealousy take a person out of this world. One explanation is, literally, could kill you. Exactly what happened to Korach, right? Could totally destroy you. So that being said, had he got the message, had he internalized the message and saw everything's a divine decree and that he shouldn't have been jealous and Moshe Rabbeinu's not taking anything for himself, right? Everything's a divine decree and God gave a stamp of approval, for Moshe in front of everybody, right? In front of the entire nation. So he's not doing anything for himself. How could jealousy kill him? How could jealousy have killed him? Why didn't he get the message? Why didn't he understand it's a divine decree? Right? So in the end, he doesn't come out against Moshe Rabbeinu, because if he did, he'd come out against the king. They would have killed him. So he comes out against Aaron. He's jealous. He deserved it. Right? Maybe he did in a certain way, but obviously God didn't think so. Right? So he says if we, forget about understanding to the best of our ability and how much we're going to work on it and God's going to speak to me and he's going to tell me and all this. Forget all about that. It's all a divine decree. So none of these questions should even come up. If you believe it's a divine decree, and God says, listen to the rabbis, listen to the Kohanim in all generations, what are you questioning? What in the world are you questioning? You're going to say, no, but what about this other verse? It's a divine decree. If it's a totally divine decree, you don't have the right to question here. Doesn't mean like the Christians take it with a leap of faith. Doesn't mean we can't ask questions. You're allowed to ask questions. We love questions, but if the questions don't go anywhere, and you're not interested in the answer, then the question's moot, right? Then it's totally irrelevant because you're going to come to the same thing. But the rabbis are adding. No, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. Whatever. All these other proofs are not going to make any difference. I would just be happier, right? I would be 10 times happier just to admit you pick and choose. And that's it. I'm not gonna have any issues. You're living in that world. You want to say I never listen to the rabbis? That's a lie. Right? That is a total lie. But you have to understand, as we're winding down here, you have to understand the eternal logic of the Torah itself. You're right to say you can't add or subtract to the Torah. But at the same time, I got another verse that says you go according to the majority. And the majority are the rabbis. The majority are not the Karaites. I don't care. You can have a majority for bad. Right? You can have the, Reform and Conservative. They're, maybe people not affiliated are actually the real majority. Right? But let's say, 60, 70, 80%, of world Jewry today is either Reform and Conservative. They're quote unquote the majority. Why don't we go after them? We don't go after them because we know what they're doing. Going after the majority when it's bad or wrong, that we don't do. So even if we're in the minority, now we know what the truth is. They're going to fall by the wayside. Right? So therefore, any time in Talmudic literature just about where you have the majority, you go according to the majority, right? So if the rabbis are the majority, which clearly according to the Talmud they are, right? And 99% of the time, whatever they say goes, right? We don't take minority opinions generally. Sometimes maybe in Jewish law we'll bring out a minority opinion to be stringent or whatever, but in general we go according to the majority. If you go according to the majority, what in the world's the argument? You want to say they usurp power, they killed people, they did other. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. Yeah,
we see so often, and even more in this day and age, how some people just don't want to accept authorities. I mean, and stand up against. There's protests going on all over in the U.S. I heard they had to call in the National Guard in one state.
Right. Right. That's the whole point about accepting somebody. Why should I, that was the whole point of this whole discussion is why should I accept, a teacher? If he's got authority, he learned under good people, and that rabbi learned under good people, you're going in a link in a chain. And that's what the majority is. So again, someone's going to say, doesn't matter. They're still adding to the Torah. You're not going to, there's no win in the argument, right? Because you're going to keep coming back with the same
But this
thing.
is the point. Accepting.
No, but they're not right. But these people don't want it.
But you're saying accepting a Torah teacher, accepting.
Right,
and this
right.
Is what,
if they don't want that, and they say, I'm going to do what God wants, and their rabbis are doing this, the rabbis are doing that, you have to analyze. You have to look at the information. You have to see if the information is true or not, right? You cannot just, make statements and pull things apart. That's what I did on Tanakh Talk about, different things in oral law that make non-Jews look bad. You have to see what the context is, right? And you want to call it apologetics and this or that. It doesn't matter. It has to be understood in context. You cannot pull things out of thin air and just say, oh, look, the rabbis are this, the rabbis that. Okay, so you want to make us look bad? Do it. That's what you end up doing, but you're not hearing the answer. So if you're not hearing the answer, it's like the evil son, the wicked son in the Haggadah. You blunt his teeth. You don't give him an answer because he's got an agenda. And if he's got an agenda, you cannot answer an answer. I can give you 10 answers, 20 answers, 40 answers, right? And you're still not going to listen. So if you're not going to listen, what's the point of me wasting my time? There is no point, right? Because you're talking to a brick. You're talking to a brick. Either you're going to make a conclusion. Either what I'm saying is full of baloney, which could be, right? Or the Torah is true. And if the Torah is true and I have to listen to the rabbi, you have to go one way or the other. You cannot stay on both sides, right? Meaning you can't say, well, the Torah is true, but I'm going to do what I want. That doesn't exist.
It doesn't work that way at all.
It doesn't work that way at all. You cannot straddle that. Just tell me I'm going to do what I want, right? I'm going to listen to whatever I listen to, and that's it. So fine. But that's not what Torah is. And don't tell me that's what Torah is, because clearly, according to Torah, it's not true, right? And it's not going to get you anywhere anyway. But okay, person wants to do that, fine. And if a person says, I don't hold according to the rabbis, blah blah blah, but you hold according to the Masoretic text, because that's where you have translation, and you wear tzitzis, and you do other things the rabbis say, then you're lying. Then you're 100% a liar, right? So okay, so you don't want to be a liar. Admit to me, just admit I pick and choose. That's it. Right, but otherwise, I got major questions I still haven't got answers for, right, about King David, and I'll ask this question, right? We'll end with this question. What do you do about going according to the majority, right? The majority for good, not for bad, right? So if you have to go according to the majority, right, the majority of the rabbis. The majority is not the Karaites, right? I don't care why the Karaites disappeared. It's irrelevant. They are not the majority. Not even close. Right? Not even close. So if that's the case, what do you do with that verse in Exodus chapter 23, verse 2? Right? Every rabbinical court, you have 3 judges, 2 against 1. You go according to the majority. Right? You go according to the majority when you have a doubt. So over here, we don't really have a doubt. Right? But in general, if you go according to the majority in rabbinic literature, which there is a lot of precedent for such a thing, that's what we have. So if you go according to majority and you're not in the majority, so then what?
Yeah.
You had a great rabbi, just give one example, what they call the Zakein Mamre. You have one rabbi that went against everybody and he got stoned to death because he didn't go according to the majority. Right? So,
Rabbi,
you have to answer
what I'm
that
hearing
question.
Coming out of you today is I can hear the years of study that you've had under your rabbi and the years that you spent with him in the court system there, the where you actually got to listen to cases. Your aptitude to debate these issues, you could just see, more and more. I mean, as time progresses, I think Hashem's got some great things in store for you, but I think today's lesson, I got to wind this down because I got another rabbi going on in 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And so, in a nutshell, going from Mishnah, chapter 1, Mishnah 15 into 16, I see there's a bit of a transition here.
Yeah.
Can you summarize it?
Yeah. So again, we said, connection between fixed times of learning, right? You got fixed times of learning. You have to show people a smile and all that, but you can't learn. And again, I've seen this more often than not. And that is, you cannot learn in a vacuum. Meaning you have to have proper teachers that know something, and they have proper rabbinical authorities. I just want to give one example because I did a Q&A last week. It's a good rant. You should listen to it. That there was a rabbi, Coffman rabbi, has been working with converts and returnees to Judaism, Bali Tshuva, for many, many years. And he told one of my students that in order to convert, you have to pledge allegiance to the flag of Israel. You have to be a Zionist. You have to be like a true Zionist in order to convert. So I went on a whole rant basically saying that's heresy because that's telling you that the state of Israel is more important than learning Torah. There's nothing more important than learning Torah, right? But where in the world you get off saying there's one mitzvah so important, I have to kiss the flag, right, of Israel in order to convert. No such thing, right? So somebody like that with all the experience, and with all the knowledge, I don't care. He could have greater knowledge than me, right? Doesn't I'm not saying I'm the greatest, sliced cheese or bread or whatever, But in the end, when it says accept the teacher upon yourself, the teacher has to be worthy. And somebody who tells you that, I'm telling you, they're a crock, and you can't listen to anything that they say. That nullifies them. That knocks them out the window. We'll speak next week about. More about, accepting a teacher who's really qualified and what it means to lay yourself down to what they say. This we could spend, next week, another hour and a half easy, without even going into any detail about, what it really means, just extracting on that because I think people have been duped. They've been drinking certain Kool-Aid. I'm not exactly sure. And they've come across people that are 100% frauds and they'll say, well, don't they have anything good to say? I said, I don't care. Even if they tell me, today is June 26th or June 27th or whatever, I'm not going to believe them. They don't have anything to offer. They have nothing to say because they have no credibility. Credibility is something else. Speak about that next week.
Awesome. So there you go, folks. You got it. I mean, and good reason to return and come back and see us next week. Hashem willing, we will be here at the exact same time. I know the days are getting longer now that the curvature of the earth and the tilt is all slowly. So maybe we can buck it back in a half an hour soon, in a week or two, Rabbi.
No, probably
know the schedule.
Probably about a month. I think today was the longest Shabbos is, so probably within a month or so, probably get it. Probably get a little bit earlier, probably half an hour earlier, within a month and a half, something like that.
All right. So, folks, there you go. We got a full hour and a half coming at you next week, Hashem willing. So until then, I got to step out because I got to get ready for the next lesson. Hope to see you there as well, folks. Rabbi Coffman, once again, awesome stuff. Thank you so much, sir.